Thank you. You may be seated. State is rested. We're ready to proceed with any witnesses that you wish to call.
Yes, Your Honor, we call Commissioner Craig.
Would you come forward, sir? To the witness stand, and before you're seated, raise your right hand to be sworn. Thank you. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this cause shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You may be seated.
So will you please introduce yourself to this jury?
I'm Commissioner Henry H. Craig.
What do you do for a living?
I'm the Police Commissioner of Kansas City, Missouri, sir.
And where do you currently reside?
Kansas City, Missouri, sir.
And how long have you lived in our wonderful state of Missouri?
My entire life.
Now, sir, do you know the outlaw Jesse James?
I do by reputation.
How so?
He's a scourge in our state, and I'm glad he's dead.
What do you mean by he's a scourge in our state?
For years, he's been terrorizing our railroads, our stagecoaches, anywhere that there's money that easily made, he's there.
Now, in your duty as a commissioner, have you ever tried to capture Mr. James?
For the last decade, I've been trying to bring in Mr. James and the entire James Younger gang.
How would you go about doing this?
We try stakeouts, we try to get people in his gang, we try all sorts of things, but nothing has worked.
All right. Now, do you know the governor, Governor Crittenden?
Very well, sir.
How do you know him?
Well, I've met him before, and I voted for him.
And did you and the governor ever discuss Mr. James before?
Yes, we did. It was his opinion that the James Younger gang was a scourge in our state, and I believe he ran on that platform.
Now, did you and the governor ever have a meeting in Kansas City?
We did.
What day was that?
It was late in January 1882, about the 25th,
And where was that meeting?
at the St. James Hotel.
Who was there?
Well, Your Honor, Governor Crittenden was there, and myself, and Sheriff Timberlake, and that scoundrel that ended up killing Jesse James. Bob was there, too.
And by Bob, do you mean Robert Ford?
I do. Mr. Ford is a man of ill repute.
All right. Could you please tell us what was discussed at that meeting?
At that meeting, we wanted to make sure that Mr. Ford understood that he was supposed to bring in Jesse James in a lawful manner, and that the governor approved of that.
Now, at any point in time, did Governor Crittenden tell Bob Ford to shoot and kill Jesse James?
At no time did he say that, sir.
Did he even imply that Robert Ford should shoot and kill Jesse James?
No, quite the opposite, sir. He said that he should be arrested and that a payment would be made at the point at which he was convicted.
Was that the last time you ever dealt with the governor's office in the James matter?
Well, I wouldn't say specifically, no. I put posters up all over the county trying to get all good people to bring in Mr. James.
Now, if I showed you a copy of that poster, would you recognize it?
I believe I would, sir.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Certainly.
Showing Exhibit 2. So do you recognize this?
Yes, sir. I put 1,000 of these things up all over my county.
What is it?
It is a proclamation from the governor telling all good citizens of the state that a reward was to be made for Frank and Jesse James.
Your Honor, defense moves to enter Exhibit 2 in evidence.
I believe it was identified earlier as Defendant's Exhibit 1. Is that correct?
That was a mistake. It is marked as Exhibit 2.
Okay. Any objection? Court will receive Exhibit 2 in evidence.
No, at this time I asked to republish or re-show the jury an enlargement of Exhibit 2 and ask the witness to be allowed to step down.
You may do so.
So. Sir, could you please read the first 3 lines of this proclamation?
Proclamation of the Governor of Missouri, reward for the arrest of express and training robbers.
Has anybody signed this proclamation?
Yes, sir. Governor Crittenden, right down there at the bottom.
Now, the Attorney General has claimed that the governor ordered Jesse James to be killed. Could you please tell us where on that proclamation that order exists?
That does not appear on this proclamation, sir.
And anywhere on that document does it say that James should be killed or murdered?
No, it's very clear, sir. It says for the arrest of express and training robbers.
Thank you, sir. You can be seated. I have no further questions.
Cross-examination. You may step down, sir, and you are released as a witness. You're free to leave, or you may now remain in the courtroom.
At this time, we call Colonel Blodgett.
Would you remove your hat, please, sir? And before you're seated, if you'd raise your right hand to be sworn. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this cause shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God. You may be seated.
Nice sword. Would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Colonel Wells R. Blodgett, or Wells H. Blodgett, I should say, General Counsel of Wabash National Railroad.
Thank you. And what do you do at the Wabash Railroad?
General Counsel.
What's that mean?
I'm an attorney.
Could you be any more specific about what you do?
I represent Wabash on a number of issues.
And where do you currently reside, Mr. Blodgett?
Unfortunately, Jeff City, Missouri.
I don't blame you. Sir, did you know Jesse James, the outlaw?
I did not.
Did you know of him?
I did.
How so?
I guess legend, reputation. He's kind of, I'd heard about him through, I guess, the newspapers and also the accounts. He'd robbed our railroad on several occasions.
Well, could you explain a little bit more about him robbing your railroads?
Well, I should say, first off, in the process of robbing a railroad many times, that he, I believe he murdered 2 Wabash employees in the course of this.
Sustained.
So, did you do anything as part of your employment with the railroads to try to rid our state of Jesse James?
I did.
What was that?
After talking to Governor Crittenden, I met with some other railroad men to raise the reward money for the capture and conviction of Jesse James.
And why was it that the railroads were raising that money?
Basically, after the loss, stop the loss of life and the loss of our property.
And how much was the reward for the capture of Mr. James?
I was able to raise $5,000.
Now, was that reward for the murder of Jesse James or for his capture?
It was for the capture and conviction of Jesse James.
Now, Mr. Blodgett, you said you met with the governor. How many times did you meet with him?
I believe once.
Now, during that meeting, at any point in time, did our governor say that he wanted Jesse James murdered?
No, sir.
Did he say that he wanted Bob Ford to kill Jesse James?
No, sir.
What did he say?
He said that, well, mainly it was me expressing the railroad's concerns to Governor Crittenden and him basically agreeing that the award would be suitable for capture and conviction of Mr. James.
So just so we're clear, at no point in time the governor expressed his desire for James to be killed?
No, sir.
Mr. Blodgett, has that reward ever been paid to Robert Ford?
No, sir.
I have no further questions.
Cross-examination.
Colonel Blodgett, you met with the governor on the 20th of
is correct.
And the day before, you received a telegram from the Rock Island Pacific Railroad, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll show you on page 10, that telegram.
Thank you, Missy.
Is that okay?
This looks like it.
Now, see if there's addition of exhibit 10.
I'm going to object to hearsay. We don't know the declarant of this telegram. It's authentic, or excuse me, therefore it's hearsay.
No, we're not hearsay of this decision of court experience.
Your Honor, all this says is that RIRR, railroad, are they claiming a railroad as a co-conspirator?
What's your exception to the hearsay rule? Certainly.
Your Honor, it is, as you will gather by this point, the theory of the state of Missouri that the governor and representatives of a variety of railroads, including that for which Colonel Blodgett is employed, and also the Rock Island and Pacific, engaged in conspiracy. In essence, that conspiracy involves the payment of money for a reward. The condition of the payment of that reward was to be the killing of Jesse James. And in fact, I think if you examine the contents of this particular exhibit, it shows, or certainly strongly implies, that that was the condition for the payment of this reward. Direct your attention. Does the court have a copy of the exhibit?
I do have a copy.
I direct the court's attention in particular to the portion of the exhibit with which
I'm aware of the portion of the exhibit. I assume, are you referring to the body of the telegraph?
the last line. Your Honor.
Absolutely, yes. But, and the source of the it is sent to Colonel Blodgett, and it states on it that it was sent by the railroad.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Court's going to overrule the objection.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Colonel Blodgett? I'm going to ask you to draw your attention to the last line of this telegram. No bunny, no body, no money. Telegram states that the reward money is available as agreed, released upon a satisfactory outcome, no body, no money, correct?
That's what it says here.
And you received this telegram and met with the governor the next day, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Did you relay the information in this telegraph to the governor at that meeting?
No, I did not.
What did you talk to the governor about in that meeting?
We discussed basically that the railroad wanted a problem solved permanently through the capture and conviction of Mr. James.
Thank you. No further questions.
Redirect.
Briefly, Your Honor. Had somebody come to you and said, I've captured Mr. James, but that person didn't have Mr. James with them or in their custody, would you have given them a reward?
They had no body.
That's right.
I would give them no money.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Redirect. You may step down, sir, and you're released as a witness, so you may remain in the courtroom or you're free to leave.
Let's call Governor Crittenden.
Come forward, sir, and raise your right hand to be sworn. You solemnly swear the testimony you give in this case shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
You may be seated.
Governor, could you introduce yourself to our jury?
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Thomas Crittenden. I'm your 24th governor, 51 years old, married, 3 kids, and I guess we all know why I'm here.
Governor, did the state of Missouri have a problem with the James Gang when you were running for office?
We certainly did.
Could you describe to the jury that problem?
Well, now you understand the James Gang was a problem long before I ever took office. And in fact, Jesse James had joined Quantrell's Raiders. He was a member of Bloody Bill Anderson's group. On past the Civil War, we had firsthand accounts of Jesse James personally shooting people in the commission of robberies.
Sustained.
Governor, were there economic problems caused by the activities of the James Gang?
Yes, yeah, of course. The James Gang was causing difficulty with the stagecoaches. The James Gang was causing difficulty with the trains and the banks. In fact, the railroads had considered swinging all their trains south through Arkansas, north through Iowa, to avoid the robber state.
Did you feel it was your responsibility as the governor of this state to do something about that?
Law and order is the responsibility of the governor of the great state of Missouri.
And is the protection of the citizens of this state one of your responsibilities?
The life and property and health of the citizens is my #1 concern as the governor.
Did you run on a platform of law and order?
I gave that stump speech a million times across the state as I was running for office.
When you became governor, what were your tools to deal with the problem of the James Gang?
Oh, we had tried any number of things. Troops had tried to capture the gang. Pinkerton agents had been hired to attempt to track down the James Gang and the members of the James Gang. The Pinkertons failed. In fact, the 2 Pinkertons we sent in were found shot dead. So the Pinkertons had attempted. We had troops. I had spent many hours talking with sheriffs and police captains and police chiefs across the state in an attempt to get this fellow.
And you've sat here and heard the evidence. Did a point come when you felt the reward was one tool that you would try to use?
Yes, of course it was always a tool in our arsenal. The problem is in Missouri, we are limited. The legislature has a $300 limit on how much we can offer. And for someone with Jesse James and Frank James and Wood Height and Liddell with their dangerous reputation, there's no way a $300 reward was going to give some incentive to get citizens to actually take an active part in trying to get this fellow.
What did you do about that as governor?
Well, I knew that we had citizens, we had companies that would be willing to put up more than $300. So I talked to these folks, and we got together a magic number, a number $5,000 for the arrest and conviction of Jesse or Frank or the other members of the gang.
Was there anything illegal about that?
Of course not.
And was that common practice?
To put a reward poster?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
You have seen, as part of the evidence, the wanted dead or alive.
Yes.
Can you tell the jury about that?
Well, I mean, that was not unusual to have a wanted dead or alive. That was not something that I had expressly authorized. In fact, when Finnis, now that was Mr. Farr, he was my secretary, in July of 1881, I got a telegram informing us of the Daviess County train robbery, where a conductor by the name of Westfall was killed. Another person was killed. We had first-hand accounts that Frank James is the one who...
Hearsay.
Sustained.
Did you ever tell anyone that you wanted this to be solved permanently?
Of course. because we'd had efforts in the past where we're nickel and diming it, that we're pussyfooting around on it, and we're getting, we spotted him, can I get some money for that? We needed a permanent solution.
What were the possible permanent solutions to the James problem?
Well, the younger clan, of course, there was a permanent solution for them. They were apprehended after a bank robbery, as you recall, in Northfield, Minnesota. They are relatively permanently taken care of in a prison in Minnesota right now. As you know, Frank James, last October, just a few months ago, came into my office, surrendered. There's another permanent solution to the problem. And capture and conviction would be a permanent solution.
Let's talk a little bit about the meeting at the St. James Hotel in Kansas City. Did you meet with Mr. Ford and others?
That's right. January of, that would have been 1882, January of 1882.
Can you tell the jury what took place at that meeting?
It's pretty much what they've heard today. I came in, and there was Sheriff Timberlake was there. He had arranged the meeting. He had let me know that he had someone that he thought that could get to Jesse James. And then Captain, I know he's been called Commissioner. He's now a Commissioner of Police. At the time, he was Captain of Police in Kansas City. He was there as well. And I asked Mr. Ford, I said, is it my understanding that you think you can get this guy for us? And he said, well, I think I can. And he explained that his brother was currently in the gang and that he thought he could work his way into the gang.
Did you think then that was possibly a good solution?
I thought that was, Finnis and I, Mr. Farr, had done a lot of brainstorming on how we can solve this problem. And we had pretty well agreed that it was almost going to take somebody from the inside, somebody who could get up into the St. Joe area. Now, St. Joe is a hotbed of secessionists and the Confederacy. It was not easy to send people into that area to apprehend these outlaws.
Did you tell Mr. Ford that he had to kill Jesse James?
Of course not.
Did you tell anyone else that Jesse James had to be killed to solve this problem?
Of course not.
Did you grant Mr. Ford a pardon?
Yes.
Tell the jury why you chose to do that.
We had a citizen who, no one's happy about how he did it, but everyone's happy about getting this man off the street. This man who robs trains, robs banks, hurts people. He got him. I have other James gang members still out there. And what kind of message would that send if after someone did that kind of civic duty, apprehending this guy, taking him in, getting him off the street, then he gets convicted and goes to jail? It would be a chilling message to send to anyone else who wanted to go after people as dangerous as Jesse James, Frank James, and the rest of that gang.
Governor, are you sorry that Jesse James is dead?
I'm sorry that anyone has to die, but if it's a choice between a cutthroat such as Jesse James and innocent mothers, daughters, fathers, brothers, sons, no, I'm not sorry about that.
Did you conspire to kill Jesse James?
No.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Cross-examination?
Now, Your Excellency, in the fall of 1880, you ran for governor of the state of Missouri, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And in the fall of 1880, you wrote to your dear friend, Major Neal, a letter, did you not?
I'm sure I've written more than one, and probably more than one at that time.
Well, you've been sitting through this trial, have you not, Governor?
I've been right there.
Yes. So you're aware that, in fact, in the fall of 1880, you wrote a particular letter to your dear friend, Major Neal, are you not?
That's right. At the time before I was elected.
That's right, yeah. And that letter is Government's Exhibit 3. And in the course of writing this letter to your dear friend and confidant, Major Neal, you told him you were deeply worried about the damage wrought upon the economy and reputation of our great state by Jesse James, correct?
Among other things, yes.
And you were so concerned about the negative impact on the economy and the reputation of our great state
Among other
that
things.
you were going to run your entire campaign based upon the proposition that ridding Missouri of the James Gang forever is our utmost priority, correct?
And other cutthroat gangs as well, yes.
And you told Major Neal in the letter the sorts of means that you were prepared to use to rid Missouri forever of the James Gang. Did you not?
I don't think I enumerated a list of all the possibilities.
You certainly enumerated some, did you not? For example, you said Jesse James must be taken out.
That's true.
What did you mean by that, Governor?
I meant we need to get him off the streets.
Ah, a curious interpretation of the phrase, but I'll accept that. You also said, did you not, that you closed your letter with this declaration, be it by an assassin's bullet or an executioner's noose, James must be stopped once and for all. You wanted him dead, didn't you, Governor?
I did not necessarily want him dead.
Oh? What is the customary result of an assassin's bullet, Governor?
Be it by assassin's bullet or executioner's noose.
What's the customary result of an executioner's noose, Governor?
I would hope that it would
Death,
be death.
is it not, Governor?
Yes.
You wanted him dead.
That was one of the options that I had on the table.
I see. You were, in any case, elected in 1880, were you not?
That is, I was elected, yes.
And you, of course, took immediate action to stop this reign of terror by James.
That is correct.
You called out the militia.
I did not.
No. You deputized a special posse.
I didn't, but sheriffs across the state did.
No, but they'd been doing that before you were elected.
Exactly.
Isn't that right?
Right.
Yes. But you ran on a platform that you were going to do something different. Isn't that right, Governor?
Well, different in that hopefully we would get success where we had not had success before.
Now, in fact, you concluded, did you not, Governor, that ordinary law enforcement methods wouldn't work against this gang of vicious killers?
We did not conclude that. In July of 1881, we concluded that we needed to add something new to the mix.
And that something new was a reward, was it not?
That is right.
And so, of course, you immediately went to the democratically elected legislators who certainly shared your concern about this scourge, and you went to them and you asked for reward money.
Well, not in July.
Did you ever ask them for reward money?
In July, the legislature's not in session, sir.
At any point from your inauguration until
Yes.
July, did you ask the legislature of the state of Missouri to appropriate money for a large reward?
I was able to get a large reward without going to the legislature.
That wasn't my question, Governor. Did you go to the elected representatives of this great state to obtain any money?
You're asking, did I wait until September, October, when the legislature was in session to get a reward authorized by them? No, I did not.
You had mentioned something about a $300 limit.
That's correct.
Was the legislature in session at any time in the first half of 1881?
Yes.
And at any point in the first half of 1881, did you approach them about raising money for a reward?
Not for any more than $300.
Not for more than $300. You didn't think that the legislature might share your concern about this scourge and be willing to put up public funds for this purpose?
Well, I'm glad that you agree that he was a scourge on the state, Counselor. And I would also inform you that the triggering event in July, where we went to get the additional money, there was a triggering event that did not occur in January, February, March. The triggering event was the murder of 2 innocent people in Davies County when the James gang robbed the train.
Oh, so it was for the first time in July of 1881, you realized the James gang was a gang of murdering cutthroats? That was the first time you realized it?
No.
No, in fact, you'd run on a platform of eliminating him from this state. And during the entire first half of your first year in office, you made no attempt to go to the publicly elected representatives of the state to obtain reward money, did you?
Did not ask for anything more than $300.
You didn't ask the legislature to raise the limit.
I did not.
Perhaps because the democratically elected legislature of this state didn't see in the James gang the same reign of terror that you did, perhaps.
Objection, Your Honor. That's speculation.
Sustained.
No evidence of that.
So, in any event, you decided to privatize law enforcement in the summer of 1881, correct?
No.
You went to the railroads in order to obtain the money that you were unwilling to ask the taxpayers for, correct?
I was not unwilling to ask the taxpayers. The triggering event occurred in July 15th of 1881, and that was the pocket of money that I had available to me at that time.
I see. And so you did, in any case, go to the railroads, who were your political backers, and you asked them for money for a large reward. You met with them a number of times, did you not?
I met with them on the issue of getting a reward.
Yes.
My recollection is I met with him once in July, probably July 28th, Thursday in St. Louis.
That was the first contact you had with any representative of a railroad?
Well, you asked having to do with this reward.
Any reward?
It was my understanding that was, yes, any reward.
The first time you ever spoke with any representative of a railroad about any reward for the capture or killing of Jesse James was in late July of 1881?
That is my best recollection, is that the killing on the train was July 15th. I got a telegram on exactly 7 days later, the following Friday. Finnis and I talked about how we were going to handle it. He arranged a meeting with me and the railroad on the following Thursday, and it was at that meeting that we talked about coming up with a $5,000 reward.
Now, the railroads wanted a permanent solution to the James gang problem, did they not?
As did I.
And in fact, when you talked to the representatives of the railroads, you found out that at least some of the railroads with whom you were speaking weren't entirely satisfied that the law could provide the necessary permanence. Isn't that right?
You're talking about the Thursday, the 28th meeting?
I'm talking about any meeting that you had with the railroads.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your question.
Let me repeat it then.
Thank you.
Isn't it true, Governor, that you became aware in your communications with the railroads that a number of them, a number of the money men who backed you politically, a number of the money men who were supposedly going to provide this reward, were not satisfied that the law could provide the necessary permanent solution to the James problem?
I disagree with that.
Now, pursuant to your conversations with the railroads, you set out to make sure that James was killed, did you not?
That is not true.
Do you deny directing your private secretary to ensure that dead or alive posters would be printed in July of 1881?
I do.
See. Let me show you Government's Exhibit 1, a reward poster that, as we've heard in this case already, was printed at the direction of Mr. Farr, your private secretary, pursuant to instructions given to him by Sheriff Johnson. Is your testimony that you did not authorize the printing of such posters?
I did authorize the printing of a poster.
Is it your testimony that you did not authorize the printing of a dead or alive poster?
That is correct.
Okay, now, of course, Governor, just to be clear, the reason that you didn't, or at least you claim you didn't authorize the printing of a dead or alive poster is that you have no power to authorize the killing of a fugitive without due process.
When you add without due process, I would agree with that.
Oh, you have the power to authorize the killing of fugitives?
I have the power to put out a dead or alive wanted poster for the capture or conviction of a fugitive.
A dead or alive wanted poster for the capture or conviction of a fugitive.
That's correct.
You don't find any modest contradiction in those terms?
In capturing someone with handcuffs or capturing someone by shooting them? No, I do not.
Odd. I've been given to understand that you were a person who insisted on a certain precision in the use of language. But perhaps that's someone else. Now, do you deny that Mr. Farr told you that, in fact, posters of this kind were plastered throughout Missouri?
Not only do I not deny it, he came to me 2 weeks later, 2 weeks after I had authorized the proclamation reward, and said, hey, I apologize, but it looks like we've got another reward poster out there.
A reward poster that calls for dead or alive.
That's right.
And that says that the reward is for Jesse and Frank James dead or alive with your name on it.
That's true.
And so, what steps did you take to advise the citizens of the state of Missouri that these essentially unconstitutional licenses to kill really weren't authorized by you, Governor?
Your Honor, I would object to that. The prosecutor's making a statement of law. There's no evidence of that.
Your Honor, if I might
And
respond.
it's not in the form of a question.
Is there a suggestion, is it seriously suggested that the governor of this state has the right to authorize people to kill fugitives on sight? Is that the serious suggestion of counsel?
Your Honor, I object. That's not what this does. And it's not a question.
Overruled.
Now, early in 1882, the reward offer bears some fruit, does it not?
Talking about January of 82, where we're getting the nibbles? Or are you talking about April 3 of 82, when they got Jesse James?
Well, you received word that several of James' associates were prepared to get Jesse James. They wanted the reward, correct?
In January of 82, that's correct.
Okay, and one of those people was Robert Ford, was it not?
That is correct.
Okay. And rather than leaving arrangements with this informant to train professional law enforcement officers like Sheriff Timberlake and Captain Craig, you, the governor of Missouri, rushed to Kansas City to meet secretly with Bob Ford at a hotel. Correct?
I don't know that I rushed. I think it was there on other business, and I was very happy to meet with Bob Ford.
Now, your testimony on direct was that you didn't direct or authorize Bob Ford to take Jesse James dead.
He explained that this was a very dangerous man and that there was a very good chance that gun play would occur. And so I understood that there was a possibility that when in getting him, someone could be seriously hurt or die.
A possibility. Well, but of course, your preference was to have Jesse James captured and tried pursuant to law.
And in fact, that's what the proclamation said, $5,000 to get him, another $5,000 for a conviction.
And so, of course, you and Sheriff Timberlake and Captain Craig made detailed plans with Robert Ford about how he and those officers would work together to arrest Jesse James and to bring him in to captivity, right?
Detailed plans when he told us that all he knew is that his brother was in the gang and he thought with time he could infiltrate, that wouldn't make any sense.
Okay. Well, you arranged with Captain Timberlake, or you instructed Timberlake and Craig to work on some system of communications with Ford so that he could let you know when he was ready to make his move, right?
I don't recall any of that at that particular meeting.
And you made arrangements so that the law enforcement officers could provide backup for him as he went to seize and bring to justice this dangerous criminal, right?
I think you're not understanding how preliminary this meeting was.
I see. So your plan was that Bob Ford, that was going to single-handedly subdue and transport alive from his hideout to the waiting authorities the West's greatest desperado. That was your plan.
That is not the plan.
Okay.
The plan was to put out a reward poster for $5,000 to get people like Bob and others. This was one contact out of a many number of contacts with sheriffs and police captains across the state that I was having during this time period. It turned out that Bob, we're using hindsight to say, it turned out Bob was the one who got Jesse James.
Was there anybody else from the James gang who responded to your offer of reward?
He was the only one. And
Exactly. He was an answer to a maiden's prayer, was he not?
Excuse me?
He was the answer to your every prayer. He was the answer to your entire campaign from 1880.
He turned out to be. You're correct.
Now, the truth is you went to Kansas City to hire an assassin, did you not?
No.
And you knew that Bob Ford, when you met with him, was a murderer, did you not?
I did not know that he was a murderer, but I suspected it.
Because you... because you knew at the time you met with him that only a short time before, he and a guy named Dick Little had murdered Jesse James' cousin.
I did not know that to be true, but I believed it to be true.
You did indeed believe it to be true, did you not?
Yeah.
So, the truth is, Governor, is...
The body didn't show up for several months after April, as a matter of fact.
But you knew, Governor. You knew what had happened.
I didn't know what had happened. I believed that to be... I'd been informed that he was the likely person who had killed Wood Height.
On the very day on which Jesse James was killed, you gave an interview to the Chicago Times, did you not?
April 3rd. Yes, I did.
Okay. And you told the Chicago Times, who asked you who it was that had killed Jesse James, you said, "I tell you, my mysterious man Bob, as they call him, did the work. Who is Bob? That I am not at liberty to tell. The papers in their dispatches and interviews made Bob out to be Wood Height and him killed. He's not Wood Height. Wood Height is dead, and Bob's another individual." You knew at the time you met with him, the time you hired him, that Bob Ford was a murderer, that he killed Wood Height.
I believe that to be true.
So, did you, is it true that you didn't authorize Ford to kill James?
Did I authorize him to kill Jesse James?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. You didn't authorize him to take him under any circumstances. Dead or alive?
I don't understand the question.
Well, now that must mean that there are some circumstances in which Ford was not authorized to use deadly force, in your view, right?
I've already told you that we had a discussion that the idea of having to use deadly force did come up, and I said, and he explained that with somebody that dangerous, there was a very good chance that that was going to have to happen, and I agreed, and I said that the people of the state of Missouri would understand that.
Well, did you tell him that it would be okay to wait until Jesse James was unarmed, had his back turned, and to shoot him in the back of the head?
Nope.
But in fact, you approved of precisely that conduct, did you not, Governor?
Do I, in hindsight, approve? I do not approve of the method. I approve of the outcome. I approve of the fact that we're going to have safer citizens, that men and women and children can go to a Kansas City Expo and not be in danger of being shot down and run over by a man like Jesse James.
Okay, and in fact, you manifested your approval by pardoning Bob Ford, did you not?
Yes.
Okay. And you told Bob Ford back in your first meeting with him that you would pardon him if he killed Jesse James.
That is not correct.
You never told him that.
I never told him that.
You never told him that until the day before the day of his trial?
I didn't tell him the day before his trial.
Did you ever tell him that you would pardon him for killing Jesse James before April the 3rd of 1882?
No, and I didn't tell him on April the 3rd either.
And yet, on the morning of April the 3rd of 1882, Bob Ford walked into a Missouri courtroom charged with first-degree murder, a capital offense, and pled guilty, correct?
He was found guilty on that day.
He wasn't found guilty, was he, Governor? He, in fact, pled guilty,
I don't
correct?
recall. I don't recall.
Let me hand you Government's Exhibit 20.
Thank you.
The judgment of conviction and sentence for Robert Ford. He pled guilty, did he not?
He did.
So a man who had no promise of a pardon walked into a first-degree murder trial, a trial on a charge for which the only penalty in this state is hanging, and he pled guilty.
He did plead guilty.
And by 3:45 that afternoon, he walked out of that courtroom a free man because you pardoned him. Isn't that right, Governor?
I believed he deserved a pardon.
And he knew that you thought that, because otherwise he would never have put his neck in a noose that morning. Isn't that right, Governor?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Now, on April the 5th of 1882, you gave an interview to the Kansas City Daily Times, did you not?
You'd have to refresh my recollection.
I hand you Government's Exhibit 16.
Thank you.
You have 2 more minutes.
Fine, Your Honor. When asked, you gave that interview, did you not?
Yes, I did.
When asked if you had the Fords, told the Fords the choice of whether or not to kill Jesse James or take him alive was wholly in their discretion, you refused to answer directly, and instead you simply said, in effect, that the ends justify the means. Correct, Governor?
I thought under these circumstances, the ends did justify the means.
Finally, a little later on, I'd like you to,
sorry.
Your Honor, I'm almost finished, about 2 more questions. You made another comment. I'd like you to read for us, if you would, Governor, the passage from this, beginning with Jesse James. You can read it off the screen if you wish. These are your words.
You'd like me to read that? Yes, starting with the words great success.
Jesse James,
Uh,
following great success here.
Jesse James showed no respect for the state of his nativity, the home of his people, and the laws, showed no mercy to man, woman, or child in the accomplishment of his ends. What right had he in life, or his friends now, to appeal to that law for the protection of others, and that rule of mercy, which he never exercised towards others in his life?
So in your opinion, Governor, based on your own words, your opinion is that those who break the law are beyond the protection of the law, correct?
That is not correct.
That's what you said, isn't it, Governor?
That is not what I said.
In fact, what you said was, what right had he in his life or his friends now to appeal to the law? You said to the press that he had no right to appeal to the law because you placed him outside the reach of the law. Isn't that right, Governor?
Shall I read it for you again?
Just answer the question.
Okay, repeat the question, please.
Last question, Governor. In light of what you told the press, isn't it fair to conclude that, in your opinion, that those who break the law are beyond the protection of it, and that you decide who is or is not within the protection of the law? And isn't it fair to conclude, Governor, that once you, Thomas T. Crittenden, decide that a man is outside the law, that that man can only hope for justice or mercy before the throne of his Maker, because he will get neither law nor justice nor mercy in the state of Missouri?
No.
No further questions.
Redirect.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
You may step down.
Thank you.
The defense rests, Your Honor.
Would counsel come forward, please? Your motion for acquittal is denied. You ready to proceed? You ready to proceed with the jury instructions?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I will now read to the jury the instructions, beginning with instruction number 3. The law applicable to this case is stated in these instructions, and the instructions which the court read to you immediately after you were sworn as jurors. All of the instructions will be given to you to take to your jury room for use during your deliberations. You must not single out certain instructions and disregard others or question the wisdom of any rule of law. The court does not mean to assume as true any fact referred to in these instructions, but leaves it to you to determine what the facts are. Instruction number 4, the charge of any offense is not evidence, and it creates no inference that any offense was committed or that the defendant is guilty of an offense. The defendant is presumed to be innocent unless and until, during your deliberations upon your verdict, you find him guilty. This presumption of innocence places upon the state the burden of proving beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty. A reasonable doubt is a doubt based upon reason and common sense after careful and impartial consideration of all the evidence in the case. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt is proof that leaves you firmly convinced of the defendant's guilt. The law does not require proof that overcomes every possible doubt. If, after your consideration of all the evidence, you are firmly convinced that the defendant is guilty of the crime charged, you will find him guilty. If you are not so convinced, you must give him the benefit of the doubt and find him not guilty. Instruction number 5. When you retire to your jury room, you will first select one of your number to act as your foreperson and to preside over your deliberations. You will then discuss the case with your fellow jurors. Each of you must decide the case for yourself, but you should do so only after you have considered all of the evidence, discussed it fully with the other jurors, and listened to the views of your fellow jurors. Your verdict, whether guilty or not guilty, must be agreed to by each juror. Although the verdict must be unanimous, the verdict should be signed by your foreperson alone. When you have concluded your deliberations, you will complete the applicable form to which you unanimously agree and return it with the unused form and the written instructions of the court. Instruction number 6. After my reading of these instructions, the attorneys will have the opportunity of arguing the case to you. Their arguments are intended to help you in understanding the evidence and applying the law, but they are not evidence. You will bear in mind that it is your duty to be governed in your deliberations by the evidence as you remember it, the reasonable inferences which you believe should be drawn therefrom, and the law is given in these instructions. It is your duty and yours alone to render such verdict under the law and the evidence as in your reason and conscience is true and just. The state's attorney must open the argument. The defendant's attorney will then argue the case. The state's attorney may then reply. No further argument is prevented by either side. Instruction number 7. A person is responsible for his own conduct, and he is also responsible for the conduct of another person in committing an offense if he acts with the other person with the common purpose of committing that offense, or if, for the purpose of committing that offense, he aids or encourages the other person in committing it. Instruction number 8. If you find and believe from the evidence beyond a reasonable doubt, first, that on or about April 3rd, 1882, in the city of St. Joseph, county of Buchanan, state of Missouri, Robert Newton Ford caused the death of Jesse Woodson James by shooting him. And second, that it was Robert Ford's purpose to cause the death of Jesse James. Then you are instructed that the offense of murder has occurred. And if you further find and believe from the evidence beyond a reasonable doubt, third, that with the purpose of promoting or furthering the commission of that murder, the defendant aided or encouraged Robert Ford in committing the offense, then you will find the defendant, Thomas Crittenden, guilty of murder. However, unless you find and believe from the evidence beyond a reasonable doubt each and all of these propositions, you must find the defendant not guilty of murder. We're ready for closing argument.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Jesse James is dead. Thomas Crittenden and the rich men who put him in office wanted James dead. Not captured, not even tried and convicted of crime, but dead. So they hired an assassin to kill him. The railroads put up the money. Crittenden promised and delivered a pardon for the murder. The evidence in this case really doesn't admit of any other interpretation. So Thomas Crittenden's guilt, in the words of your instructions, of aiding or encouraging Robert Ford to kill Jesse James is crystal clear. The defense in this case, the real defense, is that Jesse James was a bad man and he needed killing. And that Governor Crittenden deserves not punishment but a hearty round of civic congratulation for arranging the murder. So let's think about the real defense for a bit. Now, Jesse James may have been a bad man. I don't know. Some people say he was a bad man, the baddest who ever was. Some people say he was just a fellow who never quite got past being on the losing side of the late war. So I don't know. What I do know is that in this great and free country, we have a process for deciding who is a bad man and who is not. Who needs killing and who doesn't. This is that process. You are that process. Jesse James, to the day of his death, whatever he may have done, never faced a jury and was never convicted of any crime. So he was done to death, not by the majestic, terrible democracy of an American jury, but by the secret schemes of one vain, ambitious politician and the plutocrats who own him. Now, if you are among those who think that Jesse James was a very bad man and he needed killing, you may be tempted to say, with the governor, in the governor's own words, that the ends justify the means. But I want you to think carefully before you yield to that temptation. What Thomas Crittenden is saying when he says that the ends justify the means is not that the people of Missouri, acting openly through their freely chosen representatives, will decide what ends to seek and what means to employ. To the contrary, he is claiming the right alone to decide both means and ends, to decide who is guilty and innocent, who lives and who dies. He is saying that whenever he is impatient with the pace of the law, or fearful that the law will perhaps not produce the results that he and his cronies would prefer, that he may strip the cloak of the law's protection from his enemies and send his jackals for their blood. He is saying that the law places no limits on his power. Now, there may be times when the fabric of a community is so threatened by external forces or so rent by internal violence and disorder that the executive authority may be justified in taking measures that are not strictly legal to restore the peace, without which law is itself impossible. Our beloved Missouri, in common with the rest of the United States, passed through such a time 15 years ago. But look about you. We are at peace. Armies do not rage through our cities or across our fields. Instead, in town and in country, peaceful commerce holds sway, uninterrupted or interrupted from time to time, surely, by the crimes that are inevitable in human society. But we are hardly in the grip of any reign of terror. The real threat we face now is not gangs of desperados, but combinations of greedy and power-hungry men who seek to incite fear, so that in fear we will trade away the rights and the protections of the law, painfully won over the centuries for the illusion of security. Now, the man in Jesse James' coffin may be a bad man. I don't know. But another bad man, a man far more dangerous to every man and woman and child here in this room today, had him murdered. And if you do not find Thomas Crittenden guilty, then the rule of law in the state of Missouri will go into the ground with Jesse James. Thank you.
May it please the court.
Certainly.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, people of our grandfather's generation founded this country. And one thing they talked about and established in the rule of law that they made for this country is that the government, when they charge someone, has an obligation to prove that person guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. That rule that our grandfathers were wise enough just 100 years ago to establish holds true for even a governor. Even someone who, the Attorney General, obviously, if you listen to the language, doesn't care for politically. His cronies, his political, will to get rid of crime. Look at that language. Because there is a reason we're here, ladies and gentlemen. We're here to talk about evidence. And that's what a court of law is about. Evidence is what was missing from what the Attorney General just talked to you about. We don't disagree with many of the things he said about the rule of law. The rule of law is important. But let's look closely at the evidence in this case, in this courtroom, that is going to decide this man's life. Because evidence is what it's about. The evidence that you've heard in this trial has not established that the governor of this state told someone that Jesse James had to be killed. Let's talk a little bit about something that the government concentrated on a lot. And that's the wanted dead or alive poster. Think about it for a minute, what you heard about this wanted dead or alive poster. What the government wants you to believe is that the governor, with Mr. Farr, his secretary, wanted to keep it sort of a secret and not have any connection to him, that this poster was issued by, paying cash. Remember the testimony of the telegraph operator? Paying cash to keep it off the books? Well, why? The governor said he didn't specifically authorize the poster, but he isn't distancing himself from it. Ladies and gentlemen, we grow up in an age when this wild, wild west is being tamed. And this governor is one of the people that has taken it upon himself, elected by us, to help enforce the law. There is nothing illegal about a wanted, dead or alive reward. And if you think about it, what sense for a man of Jesse James' ilk would a reward make if it wasn't dead or alive? What sense in the world would it make? Who's going to go try to capture a man like that? Yes, capture. You've seen the proclamation that the governor issued, and you've heard about it. This talks about capture. This doesn't even talk about dead or alive. But ladies and gentlemen, we don't distance ourselves from that dead or alive poster. We embrace it. Because it doesn't say only kill him. And if you recall, the first several witnesses that the government called in this case, Major Neal, Mr. Farr, the secretary to the governor, the telegraph operator, Sheriff Johnson, none of those witnesses could tell you that the governor only intended Jesse James to be killed. All of them told you that the governor wanted the problem to be solved permanently. And with each and every witness almost that has testified in this case, we've heard what permanently might mean. This is evidence. That is what a jury is responsible for looking at. This country 100 years ago was established by people who recognized the importance of evidence to prove you guilty. They recognized the common intelligence and sense that we get when we bring 12 citizens, in this case citizens of this state, together to make a decision. One of the things you will see in the instructions that the court will give you is the word common sense. Look at that and think about it. Does it really make common sense, ladies and gentlemen, that we're here today and a governor's on trial with this evidence that they have to present? Evidence such as things he said after Mr. James was killed. The governor doesn't deny that he's not going to shed any tears over Jesse James' death. And things he said after the death are not evidence that he conspired to kill Mr. James before he was dead. It is not. It's the government, for whatever reason that doesn't make common sense, trying to throw everything at you and hope something sticks. Common sense tells us there's no case here, doesn't it? Why are we here? Perhaps with all the talk of politics and cronies and the rich cronies of the governor, perhaps we're here, dare I say it, political ambition. Maybe that's why we're here. I don't know, because nothing else makes sense. Putting on a man like Mr. Ford to be believed is not common sense and is not good evidence. And if you look at what Mr. Ford told you, even in his direct examination by the government, he said the governor said to get him. Mr. Ford never said that the governor said directly, kill Jesse James. A law enforcement officer, a governor, cannot be responsible for the actions of everyone. He can only be responsible for his own actions. And you in this courtroom can only hold him responsible for his actions. And ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is not there to believe that the governor of this state, beyond a reasonable doubt, only intended for Jesse James to die. There is evidence, ladies and gentlemen, that the governor of this state wanted to deal with this problem, and he was serious about it, and he does not apologize for that. There is evidence that Mr. Ford, a man within the James gang, a gang of cutthroats, and we all know that, don't we? The only way to get at this man, after the efforts you've heard from all these law enforcement officers, was to get somebody within the inside, whether they bring him in or whether they shoot it out trying to capture him or whether he ended up dead, is not evidence that this man, the governor of our state, conspired to kill him. So when you deliberate, we ask that you set politics aside. It's not about that. It's about evidence. And ladies and gentlemen, my co-counsel and I have been given a gift here. We've been given the gift of defending an innocent man. We're going to now turn that gift over to you. And we're going to ask that you acquit the governor of this state of these charges. Thank you.
May it please the court? Counselors. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard Sheriff Timberlake speak to you this evening. Sheriff of Clay County spoke to you. And he said that at that meeting, he was convinced that the governor wanted Jesse James killed by Bob Ford. You heard Bob Ford testify that he went to that meeting and left that meeting fully aware that he would get not only $5,000 for killing Jesse James, but a full pardon if he were to be brought to the law about it. You've heard that Ford walked in 2 weeks after killing Jesse James and pled guilty to a crime whose only punishment was death. Why would a man whose only option was to die plead guilty to that crime? Because he knew he wouldn't die? Because he knew that a mere 2 hours and 15 minutes later, he would be pardoned? He'd walk out of the courthouse a free man? You've seen the telegrams. Telegrams from companies that were funding the reward money, telegrams from people working with the governor with phrases like dead or alive or no body, no money. There's no doubt that the governor wanted Jesse James gone and that the way the governor wanted Jesse James to go was to have him killed. We did not elect Governor Crittenden to be the cops, to be the judge and the jury of every criminal in the state of Missouri. Unfortunately, there are criminals. But fortunately, we have a justice system to deal with them. We didn't elect him to be the sole person to do that. We elected him to protect us. Sure, from people, some say, like Jesse James, but also from violations of our rights. As citizens of Missouri, as citizens of the United States, we have a right to due process. I'm not saying that Jesse James was a great person. I'm not even saying that maybe the state's not a little safer with him not here. But I am saying that it is not right for the governor to pay someone to kill him, to give someone a pardon for shooting him in the back of the head when he's unarmed with his back turned and his wife and children in the next room. Being elected governor doesn't give him the right to trounce our due process. As my co-counsel said, if this man walks free, our due process rights are in the ground with Jesse James. You've heard the evidence. The governor aided, encouraged, even allowed Bob Ford to infiltrate himself into the James game and kill Jesse James. And under the laws of our state, by aiding, by encouraging, by supporting and letting Bob Ford know that he would be pardoned, the governor is guilty of murder. And we ask that you find him guilty of such. Thank you.
The jury will now be escorted by the bailiff to the jury room for deliberations. And the bailiff, you have copies of the instructions. If you would set them on the table so the jury can begin their deliberations. And we'll take a recess while the jury deliberates.
All right.
You may be seated. I believe because of the nature of the time restraints, we have a little unusual verdict. So if the defendant will please rise. The verdict, as signed by the foreman of the jury, says that we, the jury, find the defendant, Thomas Theodore Crittenden, guilty of murder. However, below that signature of the foreperson is, they have written hung, that says that there are a certain number guilty and a certain number not guilty. And so I think under the in real life, I would send them back, but I'm assuming that they would then be directed to deliberate further and do that. And if their true vote was 7 guilty and 2 not guilty, obviously, that would not be a verdict of guilty. So I think the governor would not be going to jail at this time. He might be, your next trial would be when for the retrial?
About a year from now.
So the governor can be relieved of the 2 holdouts.
If you're ever convicted of a crime in the state, give me a holler.
But we thank you for your service.
We're having a little cast party down at the high for anybody that any of you want to go. We're going to
And court is adjourned.